Hello, we'll talk about three architects born on the 14th of September, and we'll start with Renzo Piano, who doesn't need a lot of introductions, but let's still read a little bit about him. Renzo Piano, as you see, born on September 14th, 1937, is an Italian architect. His notable buildings include the Centre Georges Pompidou in Paris, where he worked with Sir Richard Rogers, the Shard in London, 2012, the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York City, 2015, Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center in Athens, 2016. Well, he built a lot. And he won the Pritzker Architecture Prize in 1998. Here he said something: if you are missing the capacity to create emotion, then it doesn't work. It's not enough. I would agree with him. Yes, we do need emotions, not just in architecture, but in architecture as well. Unfortunately, emotions are still somehow neglected. And I would agree with Ingmar Bergman, who said that in the field of emotions, we are all illiterates. Unfortunately, I think it is so. So RPBW Architects Renzo Piano, the building workshop. He's active now with his own workshop, but he collaborated with Richard Rogers for a number of years when they had a great success with the Centre Georges Pompidou. Here he is. I like his surroundings, so to speak, rather modest for such an immensely successful architect. Well, they won the Centre Georges Pompidou in Paris competition when they didn't have any expectation that they will win. And, this is an invitation for other young architects to, be ambitious and have no expectations. And then some miracle might happen. So this picture was taken at the time when they won the competition in Paris. I read that they didn't have any kind of expectations because some very famous architects were taking part and they were young and inexperienced and so on, and they won. They won because they took risks. I don't know where he is here, where they are here. Anyway, he is indeed immensely successful. And he is still kicking, so to speak, still producing, maybe a little bit too much. Renzo Piano, the Shard. Now, Renzo Piano Building Workshop, the California Academy of Science. Even here, he tried something, it's not the most usual, ending of the building at the superior level. And so, in a certain way, this building summarizes his architectonic, trademark or architectonic signature. Because at the top you have these mounds, the so-called natural, and then underneath a rather predictable rectangular building. What is happening inside is something else. Certain drama, I don't know what to think about this, the taming of nature. A rare albino American alligator named Claude. I don't know why I introduced this in the presentation. An albino reticulated python named Lemon Drop. Yeah, we are taming nature, indeed. Renzo Piano is an Italian architect and engineer who won, we already know, the Pritzker in 1998. In 2006, Renzo Piano was selected by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in the world. Wow. A foundation in Paris. I kind of like this building, squeezed as it is between two existing buildings and, trying its way to stand out in a very different way. And it shows clearly that you can do an architecture based on harmony through contrast, because between his building and the adjacent buildings, there is no similarity. They are totally different. And why shouldn't they? So those architects who just try to mimic what is on the left and on what is on the right, they fail, because you could have indeed, as I said, harmony through contrast. And that's what we have here, an harmony through contrast. Renzo Piano. Sometimes, yes, he indulges in organic forms, if we are to call them so. He's a good builder. The workshop knows what it is doing. The Jean-Marie Tijbu Bau Cultural Center, symbolizing the Kanak civilization in New Caledonia. I guess this is also, a work where he tried to give some identity to the buildings based on the location and the culture of the location. Too bad that Renzo Piano built the Palace of Justice, le Palais de Justice in Paris, because I think that building is a total nuisance in the urban landscape of Paris. I don't know if I have it here. I feel like both saying I hope I have it, and equally I feel tempted to say I hope I don't have it, because I think that building is, as I called it, a nuisance in Paris. New Caledonia. This work by him, I do like. It is still a little bit domineering, but the organic forms, I think, reduce the culpability of the project. California Academy of Science, we already saw some images, or this is maybe another building. And let's see. No, it's the same building that we saw before, but well, actually, it looks a little bit different. I'm a little bit confusing. Either there are two buildings. No, it's the same building. Sorry, I don't know what's going on here. So we see the duality of Renzo Piano. At the top, some mounds, mimicking irregularities of the earth, and underneath, the geometry of man. The Shard in London, a tall building, a skyscraper. Interesting, the naming, the Shard. Here you see, in the urban landscape of London, we see St. Paul Cathedral, which used to be, the most imposing building in London. And now we see the Shard, the work of man, much, much taller than the house of God, St. Paul's Cathedral. Here we see the tower by Sir Norman Foster, and this is the shard by Renzo Piano. It seems anything goes. I mean, these days we can build anything, almost anything. The Paul Klee Museum in Switzerland, Paul Klee, a very delicate painter, a true poet in painting. And in my opinion, his museum for Paul Klee is a little bit oversized for such a delicate painter as Paul Klee. I find it, this museum, rather mega and not quite in harmony, I would say, with the small paintings of Paul Klee. But that's what he built. I don't consider this this museum for Paul Klee one of the great achievements of Renzo Piano. It could have been even an airport or who knows what. But Paul Klee again was a painter who didn't indulge in mega productions. And you know, these three waves, they are rather, I mean, there is a system here, which again is a little bit in contradiction with the paintings of Paul Klee. I don't know if I have here images of Klee's paintings, one of my favorite painters. Anyway, that's what Renzo Piano built for Paul Klee. What bothers me is that besides the size, is this formal determinism, despite the wave-like shape. There is a determinism here, willfulness, which I find a little bit incongruent, or incongruent with the paintings of Paul Klee, which are not willful. Paul Klee, yes, I will show some paintings of this true poet in the art of painting. And you'll see this is not a poet to build airport-like museums for. This was Paul Klee. And his artworks are small in size. He doesn't have, you know, large canvases like so many, you know, modern painters. No, he had exquisite small paintings and drawings. He was also one of the masters at the Bauhaus, invited by Walter Gropius, a very interesting and good painter, Paul Klee. Now we go to the Bronkush Museum in Paris, again by Renzo Piano. And again, in my opinion, Renzo Piano didn't achieve one of his best works here. He said that he understood Bronkush and that he paid his homage to Bronkush through this building. But, you know, those who know the works of Constantin Bronkush would question the formal aspects of Renzo Piano's museum. I'm not saying necessarily that, you know, the building should have organic forms, because Bronkush used organic forms. But I remember when I visited the first time this museum, I thought there was a different kind of function for this building, and not that of a museum for Bronkush. But Renzo Piano was very happy with this building that he created for Bronkush. In my opinion, those who commissioned him for this building didn't choose quite correctly. I mean, Bronkush wanted to leave to the city of Paris his old, you know, I don't know how to call it. Should I call it building where he lived and worked all his life? But Paris decided to build this building for him. And I find it rather pedestrian or prosaic. Although the pigeons try their best to bring some poetry, the vivacity of nature. But the building is, no, I don't think this building is connecting with Bronkush in a deep way at all. Anyway, that's what he built in front of Centre Georges Pompidou, where he was also one of the authors. And here is Bronkush inside the building. And this is where he lived and worked. I mean, you know, a different ambiance, a different atmosphere, very, very different. And he left through his will, his desire for the city of Paris to keep where he lived and worked. But it's true, it would not have functioned as a, you know, so-called civilized museum. And here is Bronkush with the Polaire, his dog, and you know, other images of his atelier. So between this and this, it is a distance, in my opinion. Create like a god, command like a king, work like a slave. That's what Bronkush said. Again, create like a god, command like a king, work like a slave. Well, I don't know if he said this exactly in this order. Maybe he could have said work like a slave, command like a king, create like a god. But that part, create like a god, is rather ambitious and optimistic. Maybe we had too much of that inflated self-esteem of the humans. I launched a competition actually some years ago for a new museum for Bronkush in Paris because I didn't like at all what Renzo Piano built, and I will show you the first prize. No, I don't have. Something happens. Why is it that I don't have the first prize here? I hope I do. Yes, I do. For some reason, I begin with the second prize, but something happened. Sorry. I hope my laptop is not failing me now. Okay, the first prize was won by Span, Matthias Del Campo, and Sandra Menninger from Vienna, from Austria. And this is what they proposed in lieu of the building built by Renzo Piano. This is the top view of the building as they envisioned it. And yes, a much more complex and you know, difficult in a way structure that they imagined for a new museum for Constantin Bronkush. And you see here, this is Centre Georges Pompidou by Renzo Piano, Sir Richard Rogers, and two other people who are usually not mentioned, unfortunately. So you see here the urban landscape is becoming the building, and the building is becoming the landscape. This is what Span proposed for Bronkush. As you can see, very, very different from the work by Renzo Piano. But before this, I want to show also the second prize for this competition. Imran Hossain from Bangladesh, he proposed this structure. You see here the Centre Georges Pompidou, and this is the much more modest building by Imran Hossain. with some interesting qualities here. The building, you know, the very, very mysterious interior, lots of darkness, and you know, the building inside with some ominous parts, the darkness I mentioned, something that Renzo Piano didn't do. Now we go to the famous Centre Georges Pompidou in Paris by Piano and Rogers, but they didn't work alone. They had a brilliant engineer with them, and there was a third architect who is usually not mentioned, but he was part of the team. And to my shame, I don't remember his name. An Italian architect. So this is the building we see here in the background, the Museum for Constantin Bronkush. Yeah, this is a building, and here we see again the two museums, Centre Georges Pompidou in the back, and in the front, the Museum for Constantin Bronkush. A show by Louise Bourgeois at the Centre Georges Pompidou. I don't insist, although I should have said more about this building, but that's all for now. An apartment buildings in Berlin. Renzo Piano worked with this German architect, 1997, Berlin in Germany, Debbie's house. I like these buildings in Berlin. Maybe the association with the German architect created the right chemistry. Also, the fact that the building has parts that are covered in ceramic tiles, and that brought some warmth to the building. It's also the veil, the architectural veil that covers the buildings that I think is subtle and positive. His former partner, Sir Richard Rogers, also did buildings in close proximity to this, in the Potsdamer Platz area of Berlin. But these are good works by Renzo Piano, in my opinion. And I do think that these ceramic tiles, you know, brought in a certain sensitivity, which in other buildings is not there. Even chromatically, I would say. Parco della Music in Rome, in Italy. We remember the three waves for Paul Klee. Here we also see three buildings, and kind of in this, you know, growth from small to medium size to big, and it was the same with the three waves for Paul Klee. Like Sir Richard Rogers, like Sir Norman Foster, Renzo Piano is a man who never stops. He keeps building and building and building, and you feel he will always build. These buildings are not so bad. I think they have some qualities. Paris courthouse. Now, this, in my opinion, is a disaster. Here we also see the triad, the three parts: small, medium, and big. Palais de Justice in Paris, and I truly think this building is problematic. I mean, if you see it at you know, a view of Paris, it's so big. This was asked of the competitors. It was a competition. He won it. But I think he could have done better. It's essentially a very conventional building, and it's crashing the city. But people complained in Paris about Tour Eiffel. Well, this one is much worse than Tour Eiffel. I hope I have an image with a larger area of Paris, and then you'll understand. Look at it, you know, it's well, fortunately for Renzo Piano, Herzog and de Moron, you know, wanted to build an equally giant building, the triangular skyscraper. I don't know if it will be built, but this one is, look at the buildings left and right in Paris, and it's, do we need such a demagogical assertion of justice? I don't think so. But it's not just the size, it's the type of architecture. So, I don't know, in a way predictable with three parts, you know, and look at this, you know, giant atrium. I wanted to take part in that competition, so I read the program. You know, it was about 11,000 lawyers. I don't know, either per day or per week or per month, but anyway, we were dealing here with the industry, the industrial complex of justice. A giant, look at it in the you know, you see Paris, and then you see this mammoth, which is the Palais de Justice by Renzo Piano, and it is so Cartesian and so predictable in its. No, this was not a good building by Renzo Piano, in my opinion, at all. I mean, yes, here we see the beauty of nature, but behind is the horror of man, who cannot have justice without, you know, 11,000 lawyers. And even the sketch is so graceless. Anyway, he built it. That was it about Renzo Piano. So let's talk a little bit about him if you want.